Okay. Thank you for joining us today this afternoon for this Housing Connection webinar. We used to do these with some regularity, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and they're all housed on our website in our Housing Connection area. And we decided to resume them because we've got a lot of great partners that we work with and collaborate with, and we're always looking for ways to share knowledge about the industry with our local partners and people across the state. So this is kind of the first of the launch of the new Housing Connection webinar series, and we're trying to line up another one with financial literacy. But I'm really excited about this one because I'm going to dispense with the traditional sort of intro for people and just kind of heap effusive praise on Andy Williams, our guest. He was on our board for several years and rolled off. And he's kind of a jack of all trades and somebody who constantly impresses me. He's been in the Marines, he's had his own TV show, he's an entrepreneur. But what I gravitate towards the most, because I'm similar to this, is Andy's the kind of guy that wakes up and thinks about solutions to our housing crisis. And when he goes to bed, he's still thinking about those things. And that's sort of how I operate from a policy level, thinking about interventions that can help with affordable housing and bringing up to scale and solving some of our community's most complex and vexing challenges. And if you ever have the chance to talk one-on-one with Andy, and you geek out on anything housing policy or housing related, he's certainly the guy to talk to. You can just spend hours and hours and hours mulling over these different types of fascinating ideas to help with our housing crisis. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to him on something that he launched and that's about upskilling veterans and helping them to solve some of the housing challenges in their own communities. And happy to turn it over to Andy, and thank you all for joining us. Andy, I will make you the host if you bear with me 1 second.
All right, perfect. And Michael, thank you for the introduction, and it was a pleasure to serve on the state board. And as he said, I spent some time in the Marines. I spent time with Blackwater, so fourth generation Texan, but spent most of my life overseas. When I came back home, kind of found common ground in real estate, and what kind of motivated me was the intersection of housing and veteran transition, which is really what Rehab Warriors was about. But my passion really is understanding the unique challenges we have. So outside of the state board, I spend a lot of my time just really trying to understand the problem, traveling nationally and locally, really looking at capacity. I was in special forces, so for me, I'm pretty much execution based, and I wanted to really identify, what was kind of a missing thread. And my initial thought was that we needed more builders. I think we needed veterans that could rebuild. We needed veterans that had the capacity, and they also needed the skills. And the skills were very much triangulated around skilled trades, but not necessarily integrated within the actual builder developer basics. So I launched Rehab Warriors, which is an apprenticeship program. And what we do is we train the veterans 300 hours of related instruction, and we introduce a real life project. And in 6 months, they have the capacity to understand rehabbing, home building. We actually work on live sites where we just poured a concrete on a project in Fort Worth in one of the worst neighborhoods, where we built over 40 homes, and we have 6 veterans in training in 4 different states. Um, it's interesting, just one, understanding their passion, and then also understanding their alignment, and then backing into like a missed opportunity. I think that we've kind of integrated with veterans in this kind of thread for America, because you got 250,000 veterans coming home each year. A lot of people don't understand that it breaks down to about 2,000 a month that's entering the workforce or entering communities across America, and they look just as I have at some of these neighborhoods or some of these housing challenges as an opportunity to continue to serve. But then at the same time, they're now, because we've experienced so much in Texas, they're now kind of integrated inside that population where maybe they can't own a home, maybe they can't buy a home, so it's actually like at their doorstep. And so what we're actually ascertaining is this pipeline of interested veterans, but also builder developers that are very much focused on how can they continue to serve their country, but then also do it at a community level. And, I think as America reshapes, you're going to have just a need for like our population of veterans to come back and really, kind of step into those leadership roles. And so I spent a lot of time really just kind of building out that framework, which wasn't hard, but it also wasn't easy because most of it was the narration of how do you actually like, change the concept that a veteran's not a tradesman, but he actually can build a balance sheet. He can be a builder. He can be a manager. He can learn the certifications. And what we've done is we've actually kind of reshape the narrative that, the warfighter coming home is actually the solution to the housing crisis because we actually can train a veteran to build 5 or 6 houses a year and or force augment some of the organizations that are in that space and then take those leadership roles and build capacity. On one side, it's a education gap, and then on the other side, it's more like, mission alignment. But, I like to, me and Michael talk a lot about like the issues that communities have and the problems and the kind of challenge that nonprofits have of being able to solve all these issues around the country. Let's just dial it into Texas. I met with two cities over the last week, and the decaying property in the underserved, under-resourced neighborhoods that need redevelopment and attention, but the lack of development interest and or the framework to be able to actually build something that's executable is actually a massive issue, right? On one side, we want to develop new construction, but you really can't build affordable lots because land cost is so high. You're forced to go back into your interior areas, but then you don't have really the team. And so part of that is what we're also educating on. We don't just teach them the fundamentals of builder developer. We also teach them community revitalization. And then we work and we have them understand that, a city needs to have kind of a housing policy or a plan, an NEZ or something of the sorts that can dial them in with incentives and then create that dialogue. And what we've learned over, the last 18 months is that there's some interesting conversations happening. A lot of municipal governments don't have chodos, they don't have partners, they don't have the conversation for that dedicated development team to kind of work on those problem properties, which then presents another opportunity to then build a network and create network effects so that there could be more Andy Williamses and East Side towns and throughout Texas that has the capacity to rehab, home build, and develop. And the trajectory of development is actually it's not as complex or complicated as people think. Um, Hurst, Texas, I did my pilot there. We did a couple episodes in Hurst, Texas, and we rehabbed a 60s build, 2,000 square foot home, and we went down to Willow Street and ripped apart and put together a little wood framer. Um, and that was in 2017, 2018. And 2019, we were delivering, $25 million multifamily deal with Gardner that we were able to entitle. And it was the first project that was affordable that we done in the city of Hurst. And, we actually got ran out because they didn't understand. They didn't want this in my backyard. And now we have delivered a senior and another multifamily. And I just met with the city, just took over a fire station that we're going to do an adaptive reuse zone, move our headquarters there. And then we're talking about acquisition rehab because it's all about relationship building. And the cities like Hearst are just communities in America that are neighborhoods that grew and they need support. I live in Fort Worth, and Fort Worth has a lot of the infrastructure. They have a lot of the resources, they have the team, and they're able to kind of be the big player in the DFW market. But Euless, Bedford, and Hearst, and even Arlington, they have like the desire to redevelop, but there's not enough of the leadership or the capacity, nonprofits, organizations that understand that. So, that's really what essentially Rehab Warriors is. It's a continued effort of service. I want to create a network effect through training the warfighter to come back to communities and to augment and/or stay in that kind of positioning of how do we go into these worst neighborhoods and really like dignify rebuild efforts, but then execute where you can actually bring capital to the table, talk to private equity, talk to impact investment, talk and understand bonds, and not just understanding that you need site control, but you also need to have a team that can execute. Because I do believe that we have a problem, we have a crisis. We set back, and there shouldn't be 2025 where my daughter, she's currently at UNT, and the idea of buying a home, I have to go buy it now for her. And luckily, I have the resources to do that, but not every family in Texas has that. But the thought that top of mind is I need to buy a house so that she has an opportunity to own a home, essentially land banking a property for her is I never thought I would actually see the day in Texas, because I started buying houses at $16 a square foot. And now in some of the worst neighborhoods, we're at 200 a foot. And I'm trying to build affordably. I'm watching my lot prices go up, but I'm also having candid conversations with developers, and they can't develop an affordable lot. And so we have like a really interesting, you know, it's an opportunity. We really like when Michael, asked me, "Hey, you want to have this?" Yeah, let's have a conversation, because I can tell you guys all the great things I'm doing, but I got so many cities on my platform. I'm trying to train as many veterans. We're approved by VA, so I actually have capacity to scale the model. And we're really like built a kind of community where I think veterans want to be. They are learning. Like, I'm not holding anything back. Like, we're ripping houses apart, putting them back together. We're running through permits. We're working in historical districts, so they're learning, the real concept of like how to build. And we're building an alliance. We got JP on our platform. We got some other large players that are collaborating with us. We're here to really address the problem, but to do so, we want to do it in a way where it's actually not my problem to address. It's like it's our problem, and I think if we can at Texas really have a conversation around the nonprofit providers, the housing providers, and really like figure out how we can collaborate. Like, we can maybe build some framework. I spent some time in California, listening and learning, and Atlanta's doing some really cool stuff on the housing side. And just some of the things that's happened over the last couple weeks has gotten, a lot of people nervous, right? Like, how do you make things pencil? How do you provide these services? And I just say you got to be creative. Chaos breeds opportunity, but at the same time, we got to look locally. And I'm a big component of like, what is the local opportunity? What is the local mission? What is the local challenge? And then let's then look at the state and see what resource we go. And then we go to the feds. And then we try to just figure out, can we build local place-based redevelopment? So, I would rather just open it up for conversation with peers if you guys have an interest in learning more. But in framework, I'm just a Marine that said, hey, I got all these peers coming back home. Some of them are going to want to kind of narrate my path, navigate it, let me breach the door, let me build the education framework, do it in a very programmatic way, friction-free way. Veterans, not only is the VA paying for the training, the VA is also giving them a housing allowance so they can focus. They're getting paid on the job for the period of time they're doing the work. So we actually are, building a pipeline of capable builders and developers, project engineers, project managers. But we're identifying that like more cities are actually looking at our, innovation or approach, but then we're also wanting to understand like how do we build more kind of support around the existing organizations that are there. that business models maybe need to pivot, or their problems need to be you know, kind of conversated at a kind of collective effort level, so that, like, I think Michael, what was it, uh, Beaumont had like 900 lots that they were sitting on when I got on the board, and they're still sitting on those, like Beaumont, Texas. They have so many lots, and I never really understood it. But I understand there's capacity issue, but I'm like, we have, like, on one side we have a housing crisis, and on another side we have, like, ineffective idle land banks. And then we have, like, mm, builder challenges, but not a capacity issue. I just think it's all about framing. And we have the harder shift is like, how do we, now that we're like discovered as the place to be, and you have migration, you have people with outside capital coming in, how does the average Texan like build a pathway to home ownership? And then how do we programmatically preserve some of these communities, but do it in a way where we have some type of relevancy inside the local framework, so that it's not just all outside capital coming in or outside developers coming in, but it's like homegrown redevelopment, culture driven, neighborhood centric. Um, basically, like we used to do in the Marines, like, take high ground for hard days, but like, how do we, really build capacity for the communities that are there, and then build framework and kind of place-based redevelopment, disseminate the information. And that's really where my passion is for the veterans, because they came from these communities. So they can go back home, and they can apply these fundamentals and these skills to their local market. And then by default, I'll have like network effect, but it's not concentrated or consolidated. It's like, sporadic, but I think that's what we need. But I'll open it up for any questions or any comments, put them in the chat. But like, let's have a dialogue if you guys would like. And if there's any particular questions, let me know. But essentially, I'm just a Marine that transitioned into real estate. Got lucky enough to get into development, but I'm still passionate about like the local problems. I'm rehabbing single family homes, doing some small commercial buildings, but just walked a pretty large mixed use site where we're going to probably look at doing some affordable stuff. Left New York last week to work on a permanent supportive housing project that we're delivering, but we're trying to get vouchers for. It's just interesting, and I'll tell you, like, nobody has a solution. And I think Texas and the team at T-Shack is amazing. What we have at T-Shack is a real smart and talented and very capable team. And I just being on the now that I'm off the board, I'm like, what a good arrow we have in our quiver at the state level. And I don't think that we're utilizing, that team effectively, because I've met with some of the other states, and we actually can solve our problem. We should not have a crisis in Texas. We have a problem, what you say, Mike. We have a problem, but we shouldn't let the crisis continue to percolate.
Yeah, I hope people have questions while you're thinking of them, or maybe you already have them. I can hopefully prime the pump for conversation with a question that I have that's kind of front and center, and that's how do you identify which communities you want to do work in? Is it veteran led, or is it Andy led, or is it kind of where you identify a problem?
Well, it's there's ROI, which is return on investment, and then there's ROA, which is return on aggravation. So I go to cities that don't aggravate me. I want to work with municipal governments that actually realize they have a problem, and they can actually sit across and say, let's do it. I'm not going to waste my time, playing your politics. It's my country. I served it. We have a real problem. There's real people here, and it's your responsibility to really address that problem. So cities that get it, they move, and I move. We execute. So I focus on execution, but um, I'll sit a city down and I'll tell them the problem. I'll do my front end due diligence, but I'm not going to sit here and spend 6 years trying to get a project through the table when there's execution we can do today. Like, we did Arcadia Trails, it was Balch Springs, and I think we closed on that RFP in 2021. We delivered amazing mixed use development by 2023. In the city I was talking to, big player in DFW, they had 400 lots that I ran a strategy with. I was trying to help them with, and they still sitting on those lots. So, to answer your question, it's all about the ROA. I don't have time to be aggravated. I'm aggravated enough at how veterans are transitioning, and I'm aggravated how the average Texan is like challenged to actually get a home. So I don't have time. I'm not a public official. I'm not running for office. So I'm here as a resource to really roll up my sleeves and help with these community needs. And if that isn't enough, then like, hey, I'm gonna keep moving because from a combat standpoint, like I gotta save lives I can, and I gotta take ground where I can. I don't have time to conversate. I
I
don't
have
know if
one more
that's the
question.
answer.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I have one more question. One of the things that you told me whenever you were putting this program together that really stuck with me is kind of how veterans have a call to serve. And
Mhm.
if it means serving their country, that's part of the reason that they may have signed up for the armed forces to begin with. And then when they're done with their deployments and they're returning home, they tend to come back to the community that they grew up in. And they tend to want to apply the same sort of service that they just did on behalf of their country to their community and to they're really that's their North Star is how can I either serve something beyond myself, whether it's my country or my community, and they're really putting service into action through this type of employment now. Do you find that that's what's motivating a lot of the veterans that you work with is that call to service to invest and improve their immediate surrounding community?
Yeah, and I'll even take it a step further. On another side, I sit on a task force with a mayor, and we're working on kind of some community playbooks to help cities deal with their veterans. It gives veterans purpose. Like veterans, like I can't explain it to those that didn't serve, but if you spent 20 years at war and you look at the actual outcome of the war, that's a large part of your life. And you have to look back and reflect, and there's a purpose gap that is created between the time you take your uniform off and the time you come back home to your community, and you're trying to fill that. And a lot of times nonprofits, they'll have a large database of veterans that volunteer for that reason, and they're very reliable, but they have to understand that the veteran is really looking for that purpose pathway. They don't look out for themselves. So veterans don't know how to advocate for the job in this space. They don't know how to advocate for the opportunity. They will do it for free because they're so driven by purpose. And part of it is when you're in the military, you really are like you have to like bury yourself and put your community or your team or your unit before you. And DoD doesn't do a good job of reacclimatizing that and reframing that mindset. So I would say that is 100% what it is. Most of them are lost. I mean, we have veterans in our program right now that are 62 years old, still searching for purpose and excited. Some that are I just got one, I think he's in week 3 and he was med boarded out of New York. Um, it's interesting just to see the excitement that they can come back and apply their skills that they've learned over the last 4 years or 15 years, and then come back to their community and contribute because that's what they want to do. They want to be a contributing factor to society, not just a job, not just employment, not just the coming out and going to work, clocking and clocking out, but how can I have measurable impact? It's like we did in the military. And so our ability to kind of reduce the access point, create a pathway, you have the information education. That was the hard part that we navigated and faced off with government to make that a clear pathway. Um, on the other side, it's they're doubling down. I'll give you an example. There was a veteran that came to me, Fayetteville, North Carolina, and he's been in the program for about 6 months. Um, he drummed up a 300 lot land bank that the city of Fayetteville was sitting on. The mayor of Fayetteville didn't even know they had those lots. They have a housing crisis. They have a homeless situation. And we're working right now with them. We have a proposal in to come in and deploy down there and kind of force multiply, create network effect to bring those units online. But it's like he learned about it in our program. And and that is like that is so common because the as a developer, like I want the 9 acre site, I want the block, I want to do the infill redevelopment. The little houses shouldn't excite me. The scattered site opportunity shouldn't really be an interest, but it is because I realized that's where I started. And so they're excited. Now, with the 300 lots, there's an RP right now for 45. We're trying to do a TIF with them, but I could train like 25 veterans to have purpose for like 3 years and bring units online. And so like increase the tax basis and create network effect, but also create pathways. And I know that for me, um, bringing the American dream to the front lines of my community is a continued service, and I get to live it every day. I want to share that process with my fellow veterans, and so 100% the purpose is there, and it's built in. And the problem to me is like the biggest opportunity we have.
So how would we identify a neighborhood, or let's just say a commercial office space that's been vacant, right? Because you can turn
Mhm.
that into housing. What's the price point? How do you get the financing for this? Who pulls it all together? How do you reach out and find the veterans that you would need to do the training to get the job done? Do you have like a bullet point system?
Yeah, I mean, it's where do you live at?
I live in Georgetown. My realtor broker office is in Austin.
Yeah, I mean, Georgetown, they probably have a problem area. They probably have a problem property talking to the cities. I mean, cities have like ineffective land banks. I just did a study. I'm about to put out a white paper. Like, there's like, they have all these, they're sitting on property, they're sitting on land, they're sitting on lots. But nobody's communicating with them um, to be able to bring it online. Either took it back as a tax foreclosure 10, 15 years ago, or it was an abandoned property that was blighted, so they have site control and they're, using it or keeping it vacant just for, local purposes. But they're like Georgetown, I'd have to dig in, talk to neighborhood services. What we usually do is we usually are being recruited to come to cities because of what we kind of did in Hearst. We just move very quietly and we just look at building connections. I have really deep, roots in the development industry. And so I'm not necessarily a competitor. Like I'll float from co-developer to developer to service provider. I'll do whatever needs to be done. For example, there's a group in the DFW market that's building a multifamily and they have a problem with they need a for sale product and they need somebody to build townhomes. So they're wrapping me in there. I could still do the multifamily. I could have done the 9% or the 4%, but I'm just saying, hey, I'll just do the townhomes because that's what they need to make the deal pencil. So we just play well with the community. So I would start with like because there's so much development going on in Austin area, like the market rate developers and seeing like how you can align and bring your mission forward and then talk to the city and see if they have any problem corridors or they have a plan that they need to redevelop. Um, like it's like McKinney and we haven't done anything in McKinney, but even McKinney, which is booming in North Texas, they have like east side that they need to get addressed. And part of it, I think we have the political climate too, because we have enough people in office now that that see the problem. Their daughters or their sons or boomerang kids hanging out in the backyard, and they're thinking, "Man, I really should build a house in the back, so they have a home they can own." And now they're thinking about what an ADU is, even though Houston has upzoned it. There's Austin's upzoned it, right? I'm trying to get markets, and communities near me to just upzone. Like I still don't understand why I got to go infield and build on a 5,000 square foot lot when I can, build 4 units. Like give me the ability to build the missing middle, and then here's the framework. What's worked for me is being able to like point to other cities like Austin or LA, San Diego. Like San Diego, I was at a conference in December and I met with the mayor's office, and they are doing some amazing stuff with like connected communities, complete communities, transit oriented development. Not only they're allowing for ADUs, but they built like a kind of framework where there's like no parking required because it's near transit. And they did an executive order, stroke of the pen by the mayor, like 30-day permits, and they removed a lot of the red tape. So what I'm doing is I'm like in the middle of building like framework and case studies and, ascertaining a lot of this like best practices and then delivering it to the small towns that need it. Like, I was with the mayor of, I think it's the incoming mayor or somebody on council, and I think they're in Sherman. And Sherman has a big, facility TI that's coming in. But they have an east side that needs to be redeveloped, but they didn't know what a choto was. So that's my point. Like if you don't know what a choto is, but you have a housing issue and you have an east side with vacant lots, they're tearing houses down. The city was tearing houses down with city funds to demo with no real plan to bring the lots back online because they don't know. So I think what we have is like, you know, a communication and, Don, I'll tell you if you can't find opportunity in Georgetown, then keep looking to the city that has the opportunity, like Temple. I met with Temple. They moved just a little slow, but I met with Temple 3.5 years ago. Nancy down there, bless her heart. I brought her to Fort Worth, and then I gave her Fort Worth Community Revitalization Overlay District, and she adopted what she could. And that's what I realized is that not every city can afford an urban planner. Not every city can, afford an urban study. They don't have the resources or the team or the expertise. But, I've always, thought it's Texans, we should share information. So that's what I'm doing. I'm having meetings in with cities, and I'm working on creating just not just a website where you have open source, but just like here, directly to the person that needs it. Because the problem is so large that everybody needs to be thinking. We don't need to wait for Fort Worth to become Austin to realize that we need density, affordable density, right? We don't need to like 2030. Oh, let's do an upzone. Like we need to do that now. Now, after I give the information to the city, it's up to them to move. And then I move where I'm getting motion. I'm not here to solve your problem if you don't want to solve it. If you realize you have a problem and you want that problem to coexist with your pathway and your development plan, good for you. I'm going to move to where I can actually be action orientated, solution orientated, and give out outputs and deliverables. And so you'll see me spread around and you'll see us kind of create impact like Fayetteville. Like Fayetteville came to me because they had the lots, but I came back with them with the right plan, and there was a clear ask, and there was right agreements and the right framework, and we've been going back and forth. But if they move forward, we're going to execute. We're going to bring those units online, not 3 years, 4 years. We're going to do that in 18 months because it doesn't take 4 years to build 50 houses. You can do that if you have the right regulatory and policy framework. Capital is going to find opportunity. That was your other question, Don, is like, I think the capital will flow towards the opportunity, but the opportunity also has to be kind of orchestrated in a way where everybody is getting a win-win-win. Like there has to be a win-win-win. If it's just, one developer walking away with a bunch of fees or the city's giving up taxes, or the one demographic of the population is getting housing, it doesn't work. I mean, you're gonna have to get creative. You're gonna have to get very strategic. But then it's one of those things where it could work, but it's not. It's like the vanilla playbook is dead in Texas. You're gonna have to get creative. That's why we're on the phone. That's why we're on the line. So if people have good ideas, I can share some of the ideas we worked with. But it's one of those things. I think the low hanging fruit is like the big cities that have grown, they have these problem communities that decayed over time and they just got left behind and they're looking for someone to address it. But it's like you got to come with a strategic plan, but you also got to look at what's in front of you. I always tell people it's like look at the 50-foot target, shoot that, and then let's transition to a rifle where we can go 100 yards out. So I'll go to a city and I'll rehab a house, but I'm looking at your vintage multifamily. I'm looking at the idle land you're sitting on, and I'm thinking, how can we do it? But you know what? By the time we deliver that rehab in 3 months, I've realized really quick whether you want to do something or not, and I'll stay on station. I'll keep moving. I'll start building capacity. And if you don't, then we'll keep moving. And with me, because I have such a, you know, vast domain experience, it's like, all right, I'm listening to my veterans. And so I'm pretty much like trying to build a battalion of rehab warriors that can go and address these problems. And most of it's like information gathering, but nobody is really has one framework. Like Atlanta's doing a blight tax where they're, taking properties, they're raising the taxes 7 times within the first year, taking it to foreclosure, and then they're throwing it into a land bank, and then they're turning it over to affordable housing. Now, on one side, I'm like, ugh, I wouldn't want to be the owner, but honestly, if you are an owner sitting on decaying property and you're not willing to reinvest, then you can't just sit there and allow cities to be held hostage by proxy. And there's cities in Texas that are doing that. They're vote by proxy because they got all these out of town landlords that are controlling decaying inventory and managing low income properties, but not allowing for redevelopment or homeownership pathways.
Andy, can I interject for a little bit? We have some
Hmm.
questions in the chat that I wanted to
Okay.
to go over, but a couple highlights from that. Well, first on the on policy interventions that might be coming down the pipeline, the statewide ADU bill has been filed again. It came within one vote of passing last session, so hopefully that'll enable you with some tools for some gentle density in some of the communities you're working with, and then also the minimum lot size bill to reduce that to match what they have in Houston has come back. So a couple policy tools that policymakers are considering. And then, what really stood out is you said that cities have a land bank, and whether they call it a land bank or not, you're entirely correct. And sometimes it might take a little bit of digging on your part to figure out what properties might be available for redevelopment that the city owns. And, I did this 14 years ago with the city of Austin, just had a public records request to ask them what for all the property and real estate that the city owned and which department had use of it and what was the intended use of the property. And, through that, like in this committee that we had, we were able to identify several parcels that have since been redeveloped as housing or they're in the process of RFPing for proposals to redevelop as housing. And we also, that's how we got our soccer stadium, Q2, was publicly owned land that was on this list of city-owned land. So yeah, if that interests you and trying to find out and on the win-win side, like cities love that, right? Because you're turning an asset that's not generating any revenue into something that's generating revenue, so it gets to your win-win. But when it comes, so to get to the questions, we'll start with Katie because Barbara also wanted to know this as well. But what does the housing product look like that the veterans are delivering? Like, is it your traditional detached unit? Are you doing attached units? And kind of what are the price points? I'm sure that's community dependent, but are you trying to hit certain MFI targets without it being an income restricted house? I don't think y'all are putting any sort of income restrictions on it, but what sort of price points are you trying to hit?
Yeah, so I mean the house we're building right now is in the Historic South Side. It's market rate. We're like in Fort Worth, we don't have a partnership, so we buy lots and we're just rolling the lots up to 100,000, and then we pill out once we hit like 400,000. So historically, I'll go into an underserved neighborhood with private capital and I'll just ride the market up to about 400,000. Not spiking it, but like I don't want to say we have a land bank, but we'll buy a lot of lots and then we'll put the product up. So in Fort Worth, we're doing like historical single family with detached garage, which is crazy. But I use that as a way to kind of get to Michael's point when in the city who was sitting on 200 lots and now they have a land bank because I asked him like, why am I giving concessions to your firefighters on houses and why am I, building market rate and you're sitting on like idle lots like but they didn't know they had that many lots. So it was one of those things that sparked a conversation. We submitted a proposal to the city of Fort Worth, but they didn't move forward with it because again, I wanted to do a large scale project with them, but they have them scattered around. And then in another city, I'm proposing kind of a tear down rebuild where you take like a 50-foot home, you buy it, and then you go higher density where you build more of a mixed income neighborhood. So you have like fourplexes or townhomes so that you can, look at like just supporting not just the Alice population, but also create like a mixed income because the challenge is, doing redevelopment, you have to look at like urban, but then I love urban core. And one of the things we're looking at is some of these shopping centers that are like really old. So like trying to work with the cities to do blight tax. I don't know, I might get in trouble for this, but blight tax on some of these antiquated retail because I just drive down and I'm like, man, these are great like townhome sites, like wasted parking infield, and then you can mix in some neighborhoods. So it runs a gamut. Like I don't know, we walked we have a $40 million build to rent that they're walking. We were doing infrastructure on market rate. So there we don't just train them on houses. We train them on development, and housing is like a component, but it could be commercial. Because they're big boys, they're big girls, and they serve their country. So I try not to gatekeep. So if I'm on a deal or if I'm working on a deal, I'm showing the deal. And I'm sharing the deal. We did a land lot class and the guys were so excited. And one of the guys went out and he ended up buying like 10 or 15 acres. So he's testing it out himself. So I don't know if they answered your question, but we do whatever's in front of us. Programmatically, we work inside plans, but the more kind of relevant is like affordable housing. We'll work on single family homes, work on townhomes. I'm a big supporter of density. So like I'm really want like more land use because I don't understand why we're still building, 40-foot, single family homes and then there's no like affordability on the lots because the land like once you build it, it's so hard to like tear it down and rebuild it. And so like let's get it right first. But in North Texas, like we're all going, I think I was working with a developer and they're all the way out and, you know, um, Melissa, past Melissa. Melissa was a, like farm town. And I was like, oh, that's way too far. But they're going even an hour outside of there. So I'm more like, can you go infield and then can we go dense and then try to apply dense studies to like some of these um, would be rural communities that are now like feeder towns. So, and then like in Balch Springs where we did the big deal, like I'm working with them because they have just this interior area. But the challenge with the redevelopment I'm doing is you really have to have like a network effect of just different food groups of developers. And then you also have that layer of like small business and housing. Because I think, and I had a meeting yesterday with a city, and it was interesting because they were tired of being passed through because they're a feeder. They were a feeder town. Now they're like in the middle, and they get drove past every day going from Dallas to Fort Worth, but they don't have like anything to like really make you stop. And and I just kind of explained it. You guys have great schools, and so if you have great schools you then will get people that want to be there, but you got to build a product. So the short answer is I build what's needed where it's needed. And I kind of have a good pulse because I'm, you know, atypical 43-year-old male with kids, wife. I want schools. I want, I want a wine bar. I want somewhere to go have like a third place to hang out. So I kind of know what people want. but also have a 18-year-old daughter who's like, oh, I don't want her like coming to me to have to have a HELOC to go buy a house. So let me go buy something in a charming neighborhood where they then can build their culture. And I think what's happening in Texas is that we're overlooking the opportunity for like the next generation to come in and take neighborhoods. Like Ennis, Texas did something interesting. Ennis is only like 30, 40 minutes from Dallas, but like you would drive from Bishop Arch to Ennis and your price per square foot dropped like almost $100 to be in Ennis, but you're close enough to the vibe. But what happened is the people moved to Ennis and they created their own culture and they created their own small little business support. And next thing you know, Ennis has its own kind of community. And what I tell people, and when I try to have conversations with community leaders, is like your residents got to have disposable income so they can buy a beer. They can go out and eat lunch, take the wife out twice a month. That's what I think that's the going rate. And be able to buy Johnny a new glove for baseball, right? But if he can't do that and it's all the money's going to rent, he's going to go look somewhere else. So I just think that we got to give these old charming communities, polish them up. There's somebody and there's families that will move. I just think you build it, they'll come, and we don't have to keep going all the way out to the middle of nowhere to build houses that really a lot of people can't afford when there's communities that can be redesigned and reimagined where there's a pent-up demand for that, not just affordability, but that neighborhood vibe.
Thanks, Andy. We have two questions left, which should tie in nicely to wrapping this up by 1 o'clock. I'm going to read this first one word for word because I don't want to mess anything up. And it's from Rich, and it's vets in your training program are sponsored by the VA, question mark, and they receive a housing allowance. So they are supported through the training, presumably by the VA.
Hmm.
And his question specifically to you is how would a nonprofit developer builder engage your teams in training, or can they even engage your teams in training? And what would be the cost to the builder if that partnership could be formed? He's building 15 homes, a veteran housing community in Garland for 15 homes.
Yeah, we just did. It's funny. We just did a deal in Garland. I think I forgot the street is. We have to donate it. I think I know the project you're talking about. I mean, essentially, just reach out. I mean, so the veterans aren't skilled trades, so they're project engineers, project managers. So the project could be used as a case study. They can help pull permits. They can help with supplies. Like basically, like force augmentation. Like they're not going to pick up your lumber and frame your house. They're not going to come in and drop off seating. But if if let's say the 15 home development, you're in entitlement and you're trying to, work with permitting or you're trying to get bids, you need to put together a Gantt chart or scope of work. Like, yeah, we can help with that. Just bring it. That's what we use. We have a partnership with Johns Hopkins University. We've been a sleeper cell for about 2.5 years, but we do capstones with Johns Hopkins. We take neighborhoods and we take their master's class and we really just like, you know, do practical application. So if you have a project, a 15 home community, depending on the stage, depending on the home, we can match a few up. And right now there's no cost. We basically the way our program works is they get 300 hours related instruction, they're getting 10 certifications, and we're taking their the live project and we're kind of capstoning it so they're building portfolios off of it. So with apprenticeships, you have like related instruction, then you have OJT, which is competency testing. So we take projects and we competency base them out. So like they can't just pass the class and take the test if they know how to, put together a scope of work or build a Gantt chart. They have to actually do it, which is cool because, a lot of them, they don't like me because when they come on the OGT side, they're like, yeah, I actually want you to do this because we're actually trying to hit timelines. And they're learning that it's like it's hard pulling the information from vendors, and that's part of it. It's like the workforce development component is really interfacing with that local workforce and understanding that a lot of times there's a language barrier, and a lot of times there's a small scale GCs or builders. They have really horrible back offices, and the smaller you get downstream to the development, the more you'll see like how family orientated the trades are. And so we spend a lot of time kind of building that back office support, and then we do a lot of technology enablement as well, So we're educating and empowering them with like the ability to know how to properly package a deal, go for the right financing, understanding the draw schedules, understanding the deliveries, what things should look like, how they should be dealing and facing off with government, understanding inspections that all trades are not the same, and then they level up. So, Rich, feel free to reach out to me. I can put my information in the chat, and love to talk. We
And then lastly, I apologize if I mess up your name, Benai. She just wants to know if you've worked in Houston at all. Oh, looks like we.
like multifamily developers that are doing ac rehab on the call. Please reach out because man, there's a massive opportunity.
Can you say that again, Andy? I think you were temporarily frozen.
Okay, I was saying if there's any, I told I'm putting my email in the chat so Rich can reach out to me and or anyone that wants to reach out. Um, and I was saying that on the multifamily side, the value add for like vintage product, either preservation or taking market rate product and preserving it or putting it into the program, there lies the opportunity. Like you have like so many cities. I think there's 4 or 5 just in Garland that are coming online that are about to, come out of the program that need to be preserved. It's man, but it's everywhere. It is it is every city has just a challenge with their vintage multifamily. Some that are market rate, some that are naturally occurring, but they're you have a situation where it's a lot of syndicators bought a bunch of multifamily, and obviously with the interest rate environment, some of them blew up. So we're running a strategy right now where we're acquiring some of the market rate product. We're going to end up bringing it to the bond market, but we're kind of warehousing them. I think we got one in Waco right now, but it's like I can't believe people are living in these because I do a lot of development, but it's like they need to be in the program. But the market rate developers don't really understand there's a program that they can get into. So really like educating that demographic that hey, there's a proper way to build affordable housing, but there's also you're sitting on assets that could be recapped and affordably done in a way that would be dignified housing that you can still have some economics, but you got to go through the regulatory environment. So there's a massive opportunity for that. And if you want a pipeline, then there's every city in Texas that's
I'm going to
looking for.
start using vintage instead of Noah. The last question was, have you entered the Houston market yet?
Yeah, we looked at something near the Galleria, but it's a big issue. I went down to the wards. I have a couple developers and I have a network of they're doing some of the kind of redevelopment where they're taking the hard corners and building the modern housing, 2, 3 story single family homes, really building that Marguerite product in these misaligned or underserved neighborhoods that are now trending. So Houston's active. I mean, Houston has such a entrepreneurial spirit and they have really strong CDCs. Um, I don't know like if our need is so vast there. We're training a couple veterans out there, but Houston is really one of the cities I think that's getting it right. And they're really there's a growing network of small scale developers that are really tackling the issue. So I don't really see the need for us to double down in Houston. But if someone is in Houston that needs some resources or support, we did case study it. But we're looking at some multifamily stuff out there. But the multifamilies like they got one that's like 1,000 units that's boarded up and vacant. And that's one thing I'll be talking to you, Mike. I'm trying to kind of figure out the science because some of these projects are so massively big that it's scary. Like we looked at a 600 unit that was right down the street from the Galleria that we could have taken into the program, but there's like 100 units that were down hard, and they had on the P&L they were spending like 400,000 a year in security. because people were breaking in. It was like it was interesting, and I'm like, but they have a housing issue and they have a homeless issue, but then you're spending a lot of money on security. So just trying to get your beacon on it. So their CDCs, I met with their CDCs in their kind of nonprofits that are out there in the wards. It's interesting. But yeah, we site visited Houston.
Yeah, you're right. Everybody, there's a huge entrepreneurial culture there, and
Mhm.
there's a huge network of small scale developers. I swear, it's like, everyone you run into in Los Angeles has a script. Everyone you run into in Houston has some extra real estate they're trying to turn into a little money making income stream. Um, but I applaud them. Well, that's all the time we have, Andy, and thank you for dropping your contact information in there. I feel like some people will probably follow up with you after this.
Mhm.
But as always, it is just an absolute delight to hear you pontificate about all things housing and all the interventions that you think about to help with our problem and not a crisis here in Texas. Key distinction. So again, thank you for your time and thanks everyone who joined us.
Thank you guys. You guys keep up the good work. We're gonna solve it, I promise you. I believe in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, bye-bye.